Today on the Daniel Baldwin Show, viewer mail and the summer of love coming at you right now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Daniel Baldwin Show, and let's get right to it with viewer mail. Sean Farley of Phoenix, Arizona. Hey Daniel, did you see the Super Bowl trophy pick that predicted who would be in the Super Bowl many months ago? I got to tell you something, Sean. I did see this, and at first I thought it was, some kind of AI BS. Somebody kind of set that up for us to think that happened. But upon further reading, it turns out that this is an actual image issued by the NFL. Let me show it to you now at first look. Take a look at this. Now, you can see that that's the back of Barkley from the Eagles and several players. And as we get closer to the trophy, it almost goes into like a spearhead. And it narrows down what players you see. If you zoom in on it, let me show you the zoom in version. There you go. It has both players, both quarterbacks of the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks at the very tip of the spear closest to the trophy. So, as I read about it, I hate when my intelligence gets insulted. Now, okay, so you're making this image in 2025, early on. I think it was in like September or something. And you're making this image, and what are the odds that 32 star players in the NFL, and you just happen to have the two guys that are going to be in the Super Bowl? And if you look really closely, are they indicating that New England's going to win? Because the quarterback for New England, appears to be just slightly ahead of Darnold, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. So are they saying, if this theory about this picture is true, and we're trying to fuel the fire of, is the NFL fixed? Is it rigged? Do they know the outcome? Are we following a script? Whatever it might be. I want to say, and I've always wanted to say, really, does that happen? Now, I'm not saying there can't be a handful of players. I'm not saying there can't be a number of referees. These are fallible human beings, but the entire league is scripted, and you would have to try to control who wins the games ahead of time to get to, it's mind-boggling. But I will say this. If I were making that poster and it turned out that the two guys that I picked out of 32 applicants for this job happened to be the two before the season, and would you have think of the two teams that were picked, would you have picked Seattle over, the Philadelphia Eagles? Would you have picked Seattle over, a number of other teams that were going to the Super Bowl preseason? And would you have picked the New England Patriots to go to the Super Bowl preseason? But both, and nailed it. Wow, man, it does look really bad. I mean, in some ways, I have to say, I still am hanging on to my belief that at least Roger Goodell and the brass that I know of wouldn't participate in something like that. And what would the purpose of it be? Like I've heard all the theories politically that these sideline entertainments of the NFL and the NBA are all there to keep the masses distracted, and all these different conspiracy theories that I've had to listen to over the years. But why would you care who won? Are you that interested in the New England area of the United States and somehow giving them the bone of winning a Super Bowl? Or I don't know. It's above my pay grade, but I did see, Sean, the poster. Now you've seen it again. And it's mind-boggling, actually, the coincidence of this poster coming out. And it'll be interesting to see, does New England beat Seattle now? Did they know the outcome? Was that controlled in some way? God, I'd love to be able to prove that, but I can't prove it. And in my opinion, I still got to hang on to, I think they're playing the games. I think so, but man, this definitely throws shade on it for me, for sure. Thanks for writing. And listen, if you have the opportunity, please, if you could subscribe to the show, if you could like the show, if you could share the show. All that stuff really helps the show. It helps me be able to get out here and talk about the different things that we hold true to ourselves or that are interesting and I hope interesting. But let me get right to it and tell you that the Summer of Love, which is what the title of the show is today. I'm 65 years old. I remember 1967, not well. I mean, I can remember friends that I was with at that time, things that I did that year in school. I was 7 years old. We had moved to a new house in Massapequa, New York. And so that was kind of new to us. But I do remember two things when it came to the news. My father was very news savvy. That played in the house a lot, in the den in our house. We watched the black and white news. And let me just read this to you. On October 21st, 1967, approximately 100,000 people gathered near the Lincoln Memorial in Washington to protest against the Vietnam War and stage a march towards the Pentagon. The demonstration was organized by the National Mobilization Committee to end the war in Vietnam, and it was the first nationwide protest against the war. At the end of the protest, the Pentagon remained intact, but the aftermath was chaotic. Around 700 protesters were arrested and dozens were hospitalized. I remember that. I remember the marchers, and I remember the how chaotic the country was over the Vietnam War. I remember that what we very limitedly at that age, what I knew of war, was that our country was at war. I remember a boy that knew our family very well, and my mother was very good friends with his mother. Roland Florio was killed in the Vietnam War. I remember how somber the neighborhood before I moved, my old neighborhood on Greatwater Avenue in Massapequa. I remember something terrible happened. Roland was killed, and I didn't really understand the concept of Southeast Asia. I didn't understand even death that well. But I knew something really bad happened to Roland. So there was that, and then there was all this stuff. The war was brought into, playing army man and doing all that stuff and going in the backyard and, me and Alec attacking with the Cornelius brothers and doing the different things that we did, emulating what we saw on TV. If you were a soldier, we looked up to you. You were defending our country. It was a military person, a police officer, any kind of agent that worked for law enforcement was to be respected and spoken to properly. And here were these kids lining up, and they were protesting about this war. And I didn't quite understand it. I just remembered how much of it there was on TV, how people were actually against the fact that we were dropping bombs on people. And I, again, thought, well, it's America, we're protecting people and we're doing something that's good. And then years later, I learned more about what was happening in the North Vietnamese and communism and so on. And I don't want to get into that right now. What I want to get into is that and one other, the Summer of Love. In what became known as the long, hot summer of 1967, or the Summer of Love, injustice stemming from the frustrations of poverty and unemployment, the systematic denial of employment opportunities by white-owned businesses and city services by white-led municipal governments, and the mistreatment by white or mostly white police forces led to the explosive confrontations between black residents and the forces that opposed them. The deadliest and most destructive riots took place in Newark, New Jersey, and Detroit, Michigan. I remember that. Now, the town of Massapequa, where I grew up, was a white town. The whole town was white, at least at this time for me. But we went to church at the neighboring town, Amityville, New York, which was black and white. So I had friends I went to catechism with. We went into Brooklyn, and there was lots of black people in Brooklyn when we went to go visit my father's parents on Sundays to eat dinner and so on. I never understood that there was a problem between what color your skin was. My father, was a proponent of civil rights. He never would have allowed that in our house. There was never any disparaging things said about anyone because of their race or their color or any of that kind of stuff. So I didn't understand it, but I did. I actively can still today remember watching the news where all white police were holding back German Shepherd dogs from crowds and shooting water cannons at black people. And I remember looking at that going, they're all black on one side and they're all white on the other. And watching the news at 7, I could understand a lot of what was being explained, but I didn't understand why. I didn't understand what was at stake for African Americans in this country, what they were rioting for, that these were their rights as Americans, and that because of their color, they were being put down, they were being suppressed, they were being taken advantage of. It wasn't an equal playing field. And even at 7, I knew based on the news that that was going on in our country. And that made me really sad. I mean, really sad. I looked at that and I thought, well, certainly why wouldn't the more powerful white people fight for our friends? I mean, I played basketball and went to catechism class with other kids that were black. No one ever said anything. I mean, I noticed that their skin was black. I remember playing stickball for the first time, watching kids play stickball in Brooklyn. And I thought, wow, that looks like fun. Why don't we play that? Well, we didn't have the buildings and the doorsteps to play them on, in front of your house in a suburban Massapequa home. But we ended up going to, my brother Billy and I and Chris Bevilacqua and other kids went to Burner High School and would play with a tennis ball, kind of emulating what they did. But I remember thinking how talented they were athletically, and thinking, yeah, I can't wait to go play with the black kids because they're really good. They're better. They're better than the kids that I usually play with. Because I was a good athlete, so I felt very challenged when I was around other African American athletes because they were so talented athletically. At church too. At church for sure. But I never noticed the difference. I never looked at their skin and thought, oh, they're different than me. They were just other kids. I'm bringing this up today, and I'm talking about this today, because I blocked someone from my social media yesterday. It was the daughter of a friend of mine. Both parents were my friends. And I wanted to reach out to her and privately write her and say, are you really buying all this? I mean, you're part of the problem because you are. And again, if there's an investigation over the shooting of this man in Minnesota, and they find that the shooter or shooters were negligent or, then put them in jail. I mean, Minnesota has jailed other police officers and agents or whatever, but here's the problem. This isn't a fight for your rights. This isn't a fight. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. This is a coordinated effort by agencies that you can hire people. I mean, and I'm not saying every single person. There's no grassroots to it. But if you look at what's happened in this state and how this works and the fuel of fire that's being gasoline just thrown all over this situation in Minnesota, I felt compelled to, the feeling of it was reminiscent of a little boy. I just went, wow, I just don't understand. Why wouldn't they just give the things that they need to give to African Americans? Why wouldn't they just give them the same education and given the same opportunities for jobs. And like, why is this happening? Why are we shooting people? And why are we doing, well, I believe the African Americans had every right to be upset with what happened at that time. I'm going to say something else about this person that I blocked. I read what they had to say, and they called what happened down there murder, and they called, that all this hoopla about, people being prosecuted, and this is what Trump's America, all kinds of political stuff, which is what a lot of people want. So the fact of the matter is that there are a majority of the people that are out there that are creating the biggest noise and jumping in front of, agents that are armed agents. So let me say this to you again, which I've said it before on the show. If you go down to peacefully protest, if you want to see your numbers like in Vietnam, not like what happened during the civil rights thing, but remember, white government agencies were trying to suppress the opinions and the views of African Americans to the point of violence. And it had gotten so bad for African Americans at that time that they had to fight for their rights. Over 160 riots during that summer, 160 cities, from little towns, Cambridge, all the way to massive, big riots, burning of buildings in Newark and in Detroit. So it varied in size, but a lot of upheaval. This situation now is about agents, federal agents, badges, guns, are targeting really bad criminals initially. They're not breaking into people's houses and grabbing this nonsense that they report about. They have a target, 4 or 5 per day, of really violent criminals, and they get intel that this person is at X, and they load up. They get out of their vans, they get out of their trucks, they get out with rifles, they get out with guns. And they go to get that target, just like you would see on any cop show. Here's the guy, he's wanted, federal marshals are coming, and we're gonna get this. They sit there in a room, this is the guy, here's the pictures, familiarize yourself with what he looks like, and we're going to get him. We're going to get these 5 today, whatever. Now, this nurse that was shot, forget about for a second. Forget about any other details except for you went to a place where a woman was recently shot who tried to run an agent over with a car. It's a hot area. It's hot. And you brought a sidearm with you that you have registered and you have a carrier's permit for it. But you bought that sidearm with you to a hot zone. If your hand even gets near, even in a crowd of people suppressing you, and someone and they go, gun! You're talking about guys that are on the job, that are there with their life being threatened, with people running, agitators running in and out going, you're fucking dead, fuck you, pig. It's gotta be nerve-wracking to be an agent after some guy who's a rapist, with people all around you screaming at you, walking in between you and your car, interfering with your investigation, blocking traffic. Isn't it bad enough already that you're going after a felon, a violent felon sometimes, where you've been programmed to be ready for anything? And then your own people whose taxes pay for you to go get these people out of our country are interfering with your investigation, and you bring a gun? So I have guns. I'm pretty proficient with a firearm for just a non-military, non-law enforcement person. I know a lot about them. I've fired hundreds of thousands, plural, of ammunition shells through the various guns, the many that I've shot in movies, owned, this, that, blah, blah, blah. When I carry a gun, if I have a gun, a firearm on me, I don't have a firearm on me all the time. I don't. So if I'm running to the store, I don't go to a safe and open it up and put a firearm in my possession. Now, if I was going somewhere to a store of some kind that's open later and it's in an area that's maybe a little more hot, like I'm talking about, maybe a place where it's in an iffy neighborhood, and I'm walking with my beautiful wife and my son, and I'm going to come out of that store and get into the car in a big parking lot. Is it possible that I would contemplate to have a sidearm on me? Yes, it is. If I'm going to a place at an event that's downtown in a city that I know I'm not going to get to my car until X, that there is a much higher probability that I could face a problem of some kind. If I'm going to a club that has an event, now I don't go out like I used to. I don't go to those things in areas where, but is it yes, and I might bring a gun with me. I might. So that is because I know I'm going to a place that there might not be on the spot law enforcement or whatever. You're going to a protest and you're not a cop, with cops all over the place with high-powered rifles and handguns under very tense conditions, and you're a nurse and you bring a gun, listen, that was a mistake. I'm not questioning his right. I'm not questioning his right. That was a mistake to show up at something, because when you show the presence of a firearm to a law enforcement, if I get pulled over in a car and I have a gun on me, I keep my hands where the cop can see it and I say, officer, I need to know I have a firearm on me. I don't want there to be a problem for you to find that out later. Or if you want me to step out of the car, if you want to handcuff me and take the sidearm away from me first to defuse the situation. And many times, a smart cop, when you announce that to him, if you have it in your glove box and you have to go in your glove box, turn around and say to the cop, I'd rather step out of the car and have you take the gun out of the glove box. I don't want any mistake. This is a matter of respect for yourself, your life, and for the law enforcement person. You show up in an event where you're going to agitate cops, yell stuff at them, and you have a gun on you, man, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. Why? Why would you do that? If you're given a lawful command, get out of your car, 5 guys with guns in you, get out of your car. I don't want to hear you. Can I know, officer, exactly what the infraction? Get the fuck out of your car. My son is 2.5 years old, and I'm going to teach him, do what the cop says. Don't have anything ever illegal in your car. Don't do illegal stuff. But if there's some reason why a police officer says, sir, step out of the car and get out of the car and put your hands on the hood of the car. Do it. The minute you start to, if you haven't done anything wrong, you got nothing to hide. They're not just going to shoot you for no reason, but you have to give them a reason. And there's bad cops. It's happened. There's bad everything. There's bad teachers. There's bad politicians. There's bad actors. There are. This is the world we live in. There's good and bad people. A vast 99.999%. This is not 1967. That's the point of the show. There's recording equipment now. There's you're not going to. Cops aren't just going to shoot you, and if they do, George Floyd, and they kill you with their knee on your neck, you go to jail. So why would this man show up with a loaded firearm under those conditions if you weren't looking for trouble? I'm sorry. I don't want to disrespect his life. I don't want to disrespect his friends. I just want to say, you're looking for trouble if you're bringing a gun down to a situation like that. You're not law enforcement. You're a fucking nurse. Go be a nurse. Go be a nurse. Don't bring a gun to an event like this. Please, people, listen to me. You are asking for trouble whether you panic, whatever happens when you show up at these events. Just showing up is dangerous. It's dangerous to show up. There's a lot of tension going on. There's a lot of weapons. There's a lot of people that are worried for their lives. This is law enforcement, ICE. This is no different when a cop shows up. If you're not learning that yet, then pay the fucking attention right now. Right now, listen to me. Don't go to these events. Don't go. Write your protest in. If you're going to go to an organized meeting at the chapel or at the park. Don't show up where the agents are and get in the way of what's going on. We're lucky it's only been a couple of people. We really are. When you think about what those agents are going through and who they're after. So it bothered me about this person that I blocked on my Facebook. I just got tired of listening to it. Let me read this to you. Yes, based on reports from January 2026, the protest efforts in Minnesota, specifically those opposing federal immigration enforcement, ICE action, are highly coordinated. So, we already have heard that the woman, Good, was working. She was with her wife. They were being compensated. They were being paid. So there are people that go to these things that are getting paid. I don't know enough about this guy, Preddy. I don't know if he was on this list of people that are getting compensated. There's, yes, some protesters are paid, often by organizations or crowd rental companies. Think about this. There's companies that you can register at, and then they'll say, yeah, show up at X, and you show up there with active ICE agents in the middle of an investigation on their way to go arrest someone, and you're walking in the street, getting in between. Can you imagine if this happened with the police? Can you imagine if I saw, my wife and I, we live in Atlanta, so there's a significant police presence here. It's a big city. One of the biggest cities in the South. And so can you imagine if I followed around, or there was an organization that could say, hey, get down to South Street and Fifth Avenue. There's a big bunch of cops there. And I started walking to that corner and then stood in the street in between them going, hey, with my phone yelling at them while they're after an active shooter. So there's something about ICE and something about this organization, this agency, that does not get the same respect. Because if you got in the way in New York City of cops going after somebody or took a warrant and thought that they found someone in a building, they'd knock your fucking teeth down the back of your throat. They would. Stick out, bang, you're arrested too. Like this crap that they're doing, that they're getting people in their way that are blocking traffic. You'd get yanked out of that car so fast in Manhattan. I'm from Nassau County. Nassau County cops, rightfully so, I'm sorry to tell you this. You have a right to protest it in a certain way. Do not interfere with an ongoing investigation or an arrest being made. You're done for. I mean, you'd have to do something really bad to get shot. But again, remember from the law enforcement standpoint, they're right in the middle of this with somebody who could shoot them. And then you show up with your phone and you think you're going to get any mercy? You're not. And mistakes can be made. And I don't know, but we saw the footage of the girl in the car. She rammed that guy. She did. And she got shot and killed. And it's a terrible tragedy for her children. It's a terrible tragedy for any life to be lost. But guess what? 1967, Summer of Love. You know how many people got killed? You know how many people, how many African Americans fighting for something, them themselves, fighting for something that really, really mattered. And they paid the ultimate price because their rights were being infringed on. What rights of this, their rights, them as African Americans, as a group of people, were not being paid the right way, we didn't get equal housing, don't get equal health care. And it still goes on today. It's not as bad as it was then, but it still goes on today. It does. It absolutely does. It is not equal for African Americans in this country. It is not. I don't care what you say. I go back and forth and talk with my wife about this, and I say, I would like to do something at the education level. Because I think if we started at a very young age and we could try to give them an equal playing field academically, they would have a chance to try to outrun this bullet of the past, which is racism. Racism in America still exists. So you understand what those people were fighting for. Why are people opposing ICE? Forget about what you're being fueled, and this is why. You're being fueled this pitch because it's a political game. I promise you it is. For the people like this young woman who wrote this thing to me when I responded to her post, I wanted to say, you know what? Honestly, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't. You're believing what you're being fed out of Minnesota, out of Tim Walz's office, about different people that want to use. They don't care about Minnesota. The national press and the Democratic Party and people that are behind this financially, they don't care. They want you to see rioting and killing and terrible things going on under the Trump administration and the Republican regime. That's what they want you to see. That's what this is about. Believe me when I tell you, that's who's financing it. People that want upheaval so that you can think this terrible stuff is going on all around the country, which it's not. This is what a majority of Americans, that they don't want to see people die. I'm a Republican. I haven't always been a Republican. I don't want to see people in immigration situations being killed. I don't. But of course, I'm not stupid enough that if I had a problem with what was going on in the government, that I'm going to run into the middle of an active investigation with armed agents and interfere with what's going on and put myself in potential harm's way. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening in Minnesota. So I got tired of reading on my feed people writing things like, look at the murder. Would you, let me ask you this question. If you went to the Indy 500 and you walked out on the track and got hit by a car, would you blame the driver? Would you blame the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's security? Would you blame? At some point, you have to take some kind of accountability for your part in the things that happened to you in your life. And sadly for this man, and I don't know whether he's working, I'm sure we're going to find out that he was probably being compensated in some way. But you're going to look at that and you're going to say, the bullet whizzes by and glances your ear or hits, some other part of your, or kills someone else in your car. And you start to say to yourself, what the hell am I doing? These are armed men and women who could kill you. And I'm protesting whether or not I think it's right for them to take people who, remember, entered our country illegally. They're illegal. It's against the law. They broke the law to come here. And the ones that they're going after, they're not going after every single person. But Barack Obama, he kicked out 10 times now, I think, or at least 5 times what Trump has in the first year. No one said boo. He hung his hat on immigration. And this is where Clinton, immigration. Bush, immigration. Talked about how we have to get these people out. Hillary Clinton, if you're going to come to this country, you're going to learn to speak the language. If you're here illegally, guess what? We're going to round you up. We're going to kick you out. I mean, every one of them has used this as a moniker. No one rioted. No one fought the agencies. No one did anything against them because they sold you and they ran on the fact and they told you, I'm going to kick these people out. We're hemorrhaging financially. We cannot continue to support people from other hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people from other places. We need to take care of our veterans. We need to take care of our people. We need to take care of paying our bills and being fiscally responsible for the things that we can, as Americans, expect to have, and especially as young children and later on in life, those 2 big categories. And we're not able to do that with the number of people here. So we have an agency for many, many years. The head of the agency now, Homan, was the head of the agency all the way back to Obama. Same guy, same freaking guy. He's now the enemy, public enemy number 1, him and Trump. Now you're not getting the information. Why would that be, that there'd be so much hatred about this now? Because it opposes this guy in this administration. That's what it is, period. That's it, end of story. Let's Let's at least agree that if the other administrations, 3 in a row, didn't, and Biden too, didn't reach anywhere near the escalation and the problems, well, for doing the same exact thing. You praised Obama, you praised this one, you praised it, and now this guy does it. And everything he does is bad. Everything he does. Well, let me tell you this now, because people sugarcoat it. People, they don't look you right in the camera and tell you the truth. And I don't care, honestly, whether you believe what I say, whether you agree with what I say. Please listen to me if you're a young man or woman, or you're somebody who's on these lists that are showing up at these events. Your life is in danger. You are putting your own life and the people with you in danger. You are endangering your children that you may not come home if you're going to agitate a law enforcement agent and get in the way of them doing their job. Please don't do that. Please listen to me. Please don't do that. Both of these people's lives, this man who recently got killed, put himself between trying to protect someone or whatever. That's not your job. Your job was to be a nurse. Your job was working at a hospital as a nurse. Now you can't do your job anymore, and your family will miss you. And an awful tragedy has occurred. But you created that. You created that by putting yourself in this situation that you never should have done. If you're going to protest and you're going to do it in a law-abiding way, don't bring a weapon. Do not bring a knife. Do not bring a club or anything that could be misidentified as a weapon to do harm to an agent. Do not bring a gun. For any reason, don't bring a gun. Don't brandish a firearm. Don't show it. Don't say I have it. You are asking for trouble. And once that starts to escalate, there may be no return for you. And guess what? I actually, again, look at what I'm saying to you. Watch me say it right to camera. I'm sad that anyone has lost their life. If you're fucking stupid enough to show up at one of these things with a gun on you, be ready to use it, because you could be shot or you could be killed. And most probably you are going to be killed if you bring that gun and interfere with it. You can walk around with a gun and no one knows you have it on. Once you put yourself in the fray, once you step out into the street, you run the risk of being killed. Whose fault is that? These are trained agents under amazing duress, actively at a job, and you jump in the fray with a gun? Oh my God, what is wrong with this country right now? What is wrong with this country? He got pulled over, he got out of the car, he opened his coat up, and I saw a gun. 3 cops, and their guns come out. What are you doing out of the car? Why are you pull over when someone else is getting a ticket, and you walk up on the cop. Can I help you, sir? My hand goes right to my gun. Is there something, can I help you? What are you doing? What are you fucking doing? You put yourself in harm's way. You made a terrible decision about what you think is the right way to protest or oppose what's going on. Write some letters, shoot some videos, go to a gathering. Don't show up on the streets while agents are working and are armed, under duress, under huge tension, going to try to arrest convicted violent and sexual felons. If you're going to throw yourself in the middle of that, que sera, baby, guess what? You're asking for trouble. I'm sorry that it seems so flippant that I'm saying it this way, but you're putting yourself, put your hands up, interlock your fingers, get on your knees, do what you're told. That's the game. That's the game. That's what these people are paid to do. So will there be an investigation on this man being shot? Absolutely. There's footage of it. I mean, everything is on camera now. Where did the gun come from? Did someone yell gun? Someone overreacted? I don't know. I just know that he'd be putting an IV in the hospital today and having his lunch in the cafeteria at Minnesota Memorial or wherever he worked if he had just not bought that gun with him. If she had just not rammed an agent with her car. If. So when I look at the summer of 67, the summer of love, and I recall back as a child and didn't understand all this stuff that was going on, the African Americans that were rioting all around that summer, all around the country, all the civil unrest that I saw, the Vietnam War, and all the things that I saw go on, and the protests and the violence and the cops and guns and just all of it. It reminded me of how confused I was then. I'm 65. I'm just as confused now. What the hell are people in this country doing right now? I understood then. What I didn't understand was why, because I was just a little boy who didn't understand. Why would you sick dogs and shoot and attack and violently treat African American people? Why would you do that? Just because of their color? Like, what the hell is going on? I remember how confused I was. These people don't believe, this other group didn't believe in the Vietnam War. Now, that was far less violent, the protests that went on. They weren't targeted because of their color by law enforcement like they were in the Summer of Love. Those people, if you were black and you showed up, you were a target for sure, just for being black, which is just ridiculous to think that could happen in this country. Please, people, please listen to me. Don't fall for this nonsense that they're trying to feed us in the press, that these organizations want you to be part of and to believe in. There is a coordinated effort going on in Minnesota by people who want to confuse you, who want you to read this and think that these, band of wild men are out there with weapons, just, running roughshod through the city and attacking people. It's not true. It's not true. It's not what's going on. There is a coordinated effort by agents to try to go get really, really bad people and lock them up and get them out of our country to keep our streets safe. And so to oppose the current administration, there is an entire organization with hundreds of millions of dollars that is going to march around different cities right now and tell you and be fueled by the Gavin Newsoms and the Schumers and the Swifties and all of them, that are just very opposed to the current administration, to try to paint a picture that this is out of control right now. So be careful, because if the National Guard, which throughout the other two situations that I brought up in 1967, eventually presidents called in the National Guard. They brought in not just ICE agents, but fully armed military personnel to squash the civil unrest because it was so dangerous to the regular citizens that lived in the areas. That's next again. I mean, as I said on this show quite some time ago, years ago now, if this man is elected, and he will be, he'll win all 7 swing states. It's not even going to be close between him and Harris. People laughed when I said that. Okay. He will call National Guardsmen in. He will go into cities where the crime is really high or where the civil unrest is, and he's going to squash it right away. He's going to. And he went into D.C., he went into Chicago. It's not over yet. It's not over yet, unfortunately. There will be places like, and you think it's a coincidence that this happened in Minnesota, where this guy ran for vice president under Harris? No, he's one of their strongholds. He's one of the guys that's going to play ball with them, that's going to do the things necessary to make you believe that we're out there just killing people. For the sake of you and your family, I'm going to say it one more time. For the sake of you and your families, please don't get involved physically when you demonstrate in these situations. Don't think that it's okay to walk out and interfere with what a government agency, an armed government agent, is doing. Please don't do that. You are putting yourself in harm's way, and that is not your right. It is not your right as a protester. You can yell what you want, yell it from the sidelines. Please don't walk out and get involved physically. Get up close with your phone, yelling in the face while you spit saliva because you're yelling so vehemently, yelling slurs that you don't need to curse at people. Your presence will be acknowledged. You'll be on the news. But do it from the sideline. Don't think for a minute that you have the right to interfere with the legal execution of a warrant or whatever, or block traffic, or physically touch, or try to get in between an agent or whatever doing his job. I have to say, if I were working that job and I got briefed on so-and-so is from Venezuela or from this country and he entered the country, and they have information, they document these guys, they know who they're going after, they're targeted. And you walk in and get in between me and me doing my job, I'm going to take the butt of that gun and smash you right in the face. You're not touching me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Now, maybe that's too New York for the average person to listen to, but guess what? You got the wrong guy being the agent right here. I promise you. I'm going to physically remove you and arrest you if you impede my ability to do my job. Just like any... Listen, please. I can't tell you how I'm trying to control myself. I want to scream into the camera right now. If you're a cop in Minnesota, can you imagine how much pressure those guys are under? Male, female, doesn't matter. You're a cop in Minnesota. You love your city. You're paid to, and these guys are in here trying to knock out these bad guys that are foreigners from other places. And they've been instructed to not help. They've been instructed. You think these guys want this stuff going on in their streets? You think they haven't spent and put their life on the line for years and have pride in their city and their people? They do. They do. No, I don't believe for a minute that they're sitting there going, yeah, these ICE guys. But they're watching their city get laughed at by a whole bunch of people in America right now, and their hands are tied. They've been told to stand down. Can you imagine those police officers going out in the street and it wasn't ICE and having the same stuff going on to interfere with them? There was an uprising, a motorcycle gang, let's pick some bad guys, whatever it is. And they went in to go do their job. There was an uprising at a stadium, and tactical police and the regular cops and state guys, and they all show up. And the citizens are getting in between them, touching them, interfering with them, going to arrest the guys who shot people, the guys who were wanted. Like, the Minnesota cops would have shut that down in a second, and rightfully so. They would do their job. This is what they're paid to do, and they do it to a very high level in Minnesota. They're being told not to. The danger that's on their streets right now, they're not allowed to clean up. They're not allowed to do it. They're being told not to do it. Why? Because someone wants this. Someone's waiting for this group of people that are organizing this stuff. They want another person to get shot. I promise you they do, because it looks bad on the administration when it's not the administration's fault. It's not. Let the Minnesota cops take the street with ICE, work together in a coordinated, supportive way for each other, and stop this craziness in Minnesota. But please, last time I'm going to say it, don't get on the street and get involved in what's going on here. Please don't, because you're going to get hurt or you're going to get killed. And that's on you. You have the ability to prevent that by how far you go with your proximity into what's going on your protest. Please don't put yourself in harm's way, and don't interfere with agencies that are executing warrants on the streets of any city. Don't do that. Heavenly Father, we love you, Lord, and we thank you so much for your guiding hand and for your protection. And God, I ask you, please, cooler heads prevail in Minnesota right now, Lord. We've lost a couple of people, and we don't want anyone else to get hurt or killed. Please, God, make some sense happen in Minnesota right now. If it's not going to be the leaders, which I don't think it will be, God, I ask you for the people to look at what's happened now, to look what happens when you oppose armed agents doing their job in a city, and you give them the common sense. If they're going to protest in a legal, non-interfering way, God, so we can keep everyone safe. Everyone, and even people that oppose what I believe or what people that watch this show believe, it doesn't matter. I don't want anyone to get hurt. But I ask you, Lord, to protect the agents, to protect the people that they're going to arrest, the bad people that are wanted. I don't want them to be killed. Don't resist. You're going to get caught. Everyone in a peaceful way. In your name we pray, Lord. Amen. So, yeah, even the people that are getting arrested, yeah, don't resist. When 25 guys come knock on the door with plated steel jackets on and rifles on, you're done. Are you going to really shoot it out? Are you really going to let your kids get killed? You're done. You're done. Put your hands up, turn around and back into them the way they just follow the commands and go. You're going to be dropped off to another country, or you're going to be detained for, you'll have your day in court. You'll have your day. But I pray that we can get this, we can get this organized in Minnesota. I pray that Governor Walz comes to some kind of common sense and stops trying to utilize this as a spearhead to agitate and get, people like this girl that I blocked on Facebook. She's bought the whole meal. She really did. I watch her posts and I think, poor thing. But again, it's, you watch CNN long enough and you start to believe the crap, because why else would everybody say this? Why else would everybody air this nonsense that's going on? Use your common sense, everybody. Use your common sense. I'll see you in a couple of days. God bless you.